Welcome to an encore episode of the Remarkable Retail Podcast as Steve and I take a break at Recharge for Season 6, launching January 17th, 2023, presented by Marketile. We've removed the current retail events news and have gotten right to the episode's heart.
That's right. We thought during our hiatus we would bring back some of our most popular episodes from our back catalog, which is now getting pretty extensive. And we also are lucky to have lots of new listeners and subscribers. So perhaps they have not heard these before. The last Encore episode that we piloted was top rated. And yes, as you know, we are all about testing new things here on the Remarkable Retail Podcast.
This episode is from the spring of 2021, getting to the heart of business. Steve, tell the listeners a little bit about it.
Well, this is our interview with Hubert Joly, the former CEO of Best Buy. And we're talking about what at the time was his brand new book, which is a wonderful book. I would highly recommend it. And the Best Buy story of transformation is also incredibly interesting. But I just loved Hubert's perspective. And we talk so often about the analytics and kind of the hardcore left brain part of business and retail. And this is really a different perspective, which I think is really useful and very inspiring. And Hubert is a great guy to tell it.
Let's listen in now.
Well, we are excited to welcome Hubert Joly to the podcast. We'll let him tell you a little bit more about his background, but he's probably best known for being the chairman and CEO of Best Buy. He's currently a senior lecturer at the Harvard Business School and serves on the boards of Johnson & Johnson and Ralph Lauren. So welcome to the podcast, Hubert.
Thank you, Steve, for having me.
So maybe we could just start off with, and we'll get into a lot more depth about your background and your time at Best Buy and your great new book, but maybe you could just give us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, maybe just before you got to Best Buy, and then we'll dive into that a little bit more.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Well, from a resume standpoint, I had done quite a few things, which meant that when I got the call to potentially become the CEO of Best Buy, I said, you're crazy, right? I don't know anything about retail. I'd been a consultant with McKinsey and Company. I had been in IT services. I had been with Vivendi Universal, so in video games and whatnot. I had been the CEO of Carlson Wagonlit Travel, another industry that was supposed to be killed and disrupted by the internet. Then I was CEO of Carlson Companies, which is a hospitality and travel company. At the time, they owned TGI Fridays and Radisson and Regent Hotels and whatnot. And then in 2012, I got the call. But beyond the resume, I would also highlight that I'm somebody, like probably everybody listening, right? We grow as leaders. So part of the theme of our conversation is I evolved over the years from being a deeply analytical, hard-charging, McKinsey consultant, very focused on performance optimization, to now somebody who believes in human magic, right? So it was a whole transformation. And I believe today that the key to success, is not, to focus on profit, is to treat profit as an outcome, and is to create organizations that are pursuing a noble purpose and put people at the center. And our role as leader is to unleash that human magic. That's what I believe today.
Well, and you've reflected that in your new book, The Heart of Business, Leadership Principles for the Next Era of Capitalism, which we'd love to talk to you a little bit more. Just before we get into that, can you tell us about what led you to the Best Buy opportunity and maybe how in particular that experience shaped how you think about business today?
Yeah, and Steve, so we have to rewind to 2012, right? At the time, everybody, right, thought that Best Buy was going to die, right? It was the all-you-can-eat menu of challenges, right? You had strategic challenges with the internet, Amazon going to kill us, and Apple and Microsoft and Sony opening their own stores. You had operational challenges with the quality of service having gone down. You had leadership challenges with my predecessor having been fired. And then you had shareholder challenges with the share price really down to, shortly after I started, $11. And our founder wanted to take the company private. So talk about, now, of course, I love challenges. But what convinced me to take the job is two things, right? It's one, it was the fact that the world needed Best Buy, right? As customers, technology is exciting, but sometimes we need help, right? So We need to we need a place where we can see, touch, and feel the products and ask questions. And then the vendors needed Best Buy, right? Because they need a place where to showcase their fruit of their billions of dollars of R&D investments. So I think the world needed Best Buy. And the second thing I saw is that the issues that Best Buy had were all self-inflicted. And that's good news, right? Because if the issues are self-inflicted, you can fix them. And so that's the journey we embarked upon. And so the share price has gone from 11 to, I think we're close to 120 now, over a period of 9 years. So we must have done a few things right along the way.
Absolutely. It's quite a story.
As I listen to you and I think back to those days, Steve and I actually met on the speaker circuit and then bonded over our similar ideas that this retail apocalypse was a media narrative, that it was a myth, that notwithstanding great transformation happening in retail, that people were missing the real story. They had lost the narrative. Now, you must have run into naysayers. I mean, you were handed, so to speak, this organization which you described, which was in tremendous transformation. The narrative around it was that it was, it wasn't useful anymore. How did you transform the culture of the organization? Because certainly, if you were a Best Buy employee, you would be hearing this nonstop from every media, and you're like, geez, should I even work here? Like, how do you hire executives? I mean, how do you change that culture and narrative? And, the results are obvious, at least certainly in the stock price. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, and you're right, Michael. At the time, everybody thought we were going to die, so you can imagine the morale. And of course, the advice I was also getting at the time is cut, which is a traditional recipe of turnarounds, right? Close stores, cut headcounts. We did the opposite. The whole story of the various phases of the turnaround and resurgence of Best Buy, Renew Blue and then building the new blue, is a people-centric story. And so, when we're supposed to die, the first thing I did, instead of considering that people might be the problem, I said, people are probably part of the solution. So I went to spend my first week on the job listening to frontliners. I went to a store in St. Cloud, Minnesota, to work in that store and be able to listen to the frontliners. I learned so much there. And of course, if the frontliners feel that we listen to them and then we do what they feel is important, like fixing our website, fixing our supply chain, investing in the training and in the stores, ensuring we were price competitive, matching online prices, that all came from the frontliners. Then, that's progress. The second thing that's people-centric was making sure we had the right team at the top, right? So my view in a turnaround, I'm a bit of a Maoist. Fish, I believe that fish rot from the head. So you need to make sure you have the right team at the top. And then it was this idea that in a turnaround, the first priority has to be to grow the top line. And so I talked about some things we did to do this, including the partnership with our vendors and our price competitiveness, because growing the top line changes everything, right? And as long as to the extent that we need to cut costs, and we needed to cut costs, the cost structure was bloated, and we took $2 billion of cost out, since 2012. About 70% of the cost takeout came from elements in the cost structure that have nothing to do with people. And oftentimes people get confused. They focus on headcount reduction. That should be a last resort, right? And it was about creating energy, right? So co-creating the plan as opposed to telling people what to do, and then getting going, celebrating the small wins, the early wins, talking about the problems and working them together. So a very human-centric approach. And the way you change, I like to say that the way you change management is by changing management. I also like to say that the way you change behaviors, which has a lot to do with the culture, is by changing behavior. So if we say we're going to focus on the frontliners and e-commerce and the customers, and that's where you spend your time and your money, to a large degree, at least in the early stages, that's how you change the culture. And then in the second phase, which was building the new blue, which was all about how do we accelerate our growth, that then you evolve, right? It's still very people-centric, but we spend time figuring out what should be our purpose as a company. Okay? So we said, we're actually not, here's the scoop, right? You guys write about remarkable retail. Well, we said, we're actually not a retailer. We are a company that's here to enrich lives through technology by addressing key human needs. Right? And it's by focusing on this purpose, you vastly expand the addressable market, right? Because that's what got us to, let's say, initiate our in-home advisor program, where if your needs are too complex to be handled in the store or online, we'll come to you. Or our entry into the health space, helping aging seniors stay in their home independently with the help of technology, that expands the addressable market. And then the second thing it does is focus on purpose, is that it's much more inspiring for people. I think there's something magical that happens when we can make sure that everyone at the company can connect what drives them, what's important to them in their life, with the purpose of the company. That creates magic. And so to make it very concrete, there was a store general manager in our Boston market. He would ask every one of the associates in the store, what is your dream? At Best Buy or outside of Best Buy. Okay, write it down in the break room. Okay, my job as the store GM is to work with you and help you achieve your dream. Right? That's a completely different way of leading. And I think our role as leaders, is not to tell people what to do. I could ask you, Michael and Steve, do you like to be told what to do? No, nobody does. Right? So our job as leaders is to create an environment where everybody can be themselves in the best, most beautiful, biggest version of themselves, and where we can create and unleash human magic.
MarketDial is an easy-to-use testing platform and emboldens great decisions, leading to reliable, scalable results. With MarketDial, you can be confident in the outcome of your in-store pilot initiatives before rolling them out across your fleet. In a challenging retail climate of supply chain disruption, labor shortages, and dynamic customer behavior, the need for reliable insights has never been greater. Validate your remarkable ideas with MarketDial's in-store testing solution. The proof is in the testing. Learn more at marketdial.com. That's marketdial.com.
I really love that, and I certainly subscribe to this idea. I think it's Peter Drucker that said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and this idea of, I don't know whether you want to call it customer jobs to be done or just kind of elevating the solution. I'm curious, before we get a little bit more into the book, one of the things that I talk about and I've written about for a while.
Steve, do you have a fabulous book that has just come out?
Thank you.
I think I've endorsed it. It's a great book. I would recommend it to everyone listening.
Well, I was actually about to publicly thank you for blurbing the book, and it's very kind of you. But one of the things I talk about in the book, and I don't want to get too in the weeds of this, but there's been kind of this narrative. Michael touched on it earlier of online kind of growing at the expense of physical. When I think shopping has become much more of a blur, and as you started to allude to, when brands, certain brands anyway, see their stores as assets rather than liabilities, they invest in them. That doesn't mean you don't need to have a fabulous e-commerce capability, but I'm curious about how particularly you thought about the balance between digital and physical and how they interacted and how that played out in the turnaround of Best Buy.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think one of the diseases that we have to cure, other than this COVID thing, is the idea of zero-sum games, right? The only way for you to win is for me to lose, or vice versa. That makes no sense. I think the way we thought about it was all focused on the customer. What are the customer pain points? What are the ways we can make the customer happy? And what's the best way to serve the customer? And we let the customer choose. We're not going to tell the customer where and how to experience us. And so we're going to create the best possible experience. And we're going to be agnostic. We're going to be neutral. If they buy online or in the stores, it doesn't matter to us as long as the customer is happy. So that was the North Star.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in our quote unquote fight against Amazon, even though it was never a fight, we decided, okay, so we're not obsessed by them. We neutralize them because we have the same prices. Our online shopping experience, I think, is fabulous now. Our supply chain, we're shipping as fast as Amazon, same day, next day, you name it. And so let's go, in soccer terms, we would call this a draw, right?
Right.
And then we say, but we're not going to try to be a Me Too vis-a-vis Amazon. We're going to be the best version of Best Buy we can be, and we're going to do extraordinary things for customers. And of course, we have assets, by the way, that Amazon doesn't have. And even Jeff Bezos said it, right, when he commented on our turnaround. So, the stores are an amazing experience. Our employees are an amazing, asset. The ability that we have to go to people's homes. And really, our dream at Best Buy became to become the CIO or the CTO for your home, right? And we would use all of our assets, the home, online, the stores, and build a relationship with you. And then, of course, with our Geek Squad capabilities, we're going to support everything you have in your home, right? So that if Netflix is not working tonight, is it because of Netflix, the pipe into the home, the Wi-Fi, the router, the bridge, the streaming device, the TV? What is it? Honey, help me. Well, we can be honey, right? And the world needs honey, right? And so if you think about it this way, you're going to become the best version that you can be, and you're not afraid, right? You're on the front foot.
Mm. Let's dig into the book, the Heart of Business. It's available now for purchase May 4th and forward. It's already been available for pre-purchase, already doing really well. When I talk to authors and when Steve and I interview authors, we like to understand, start at the kind of basic principles. Why did you write the book? Why did you think there was some white space on the shelf for what you had to say? And talk just about, about the tradecraft and why you thought that there was something you could contribute, obviously beyond turning the business around. It's a great story there, but talk about the essence of the book and why you approached it the way you did.
Yeah, it's very exciting to be talking today on the day that the book launches. It's been a journey to get there. Why did I write the book? I felt that, so if you think about this, today, most people agree that, the primary focus on shareholders was a mistake, that, we need to inspire our employees to do great things in the world. So this idea of, purpose being as the North Star of companies and embracing all stakeholders and mobilizing, employees in the pursuit of that purpose, that's the right thing to do. So in the book, I articulate this vision that I think it needs to be at the basis for a refoundation of business and capitalism. And frankly, that's an urgent need, right? Because the world is not working today, right? So we have multiple crises on our hands. So, do you think we're at a unique point in time where if we can't reset it now, when would we? In terms of the COVID era, it presents a unique opportunity to do what you're describing. Because when else? Let's hope we never have another time in our lives where we can do this reset. Do you think that reset? I'm afraid that we just, the COVID era starts to wind up and we just regress back to the mean. Like we learn the wrong lessons. How do you feel about that? The principles I'm laying out in the book were relevant before COVID. And of course, this is something I've worked on and practiced, and it has been, behind the resurgence of Best Buy. So I know it worked. They were relevant before COVID. They are even more relevant post-COVID, right? So we've all rediscovered the importance of purpose and humanity during this crisis. And we know, it is so obvious that, we have this multifaceted crisis, health crisis, economic, societal, racial, environmental, geopolitical. Do you need one more crisis? No. And what's the definition of madness, right? Yeah. Doing the same thing and hoping for a different outcome. Mm. We know who the culprits are. Milton Friedman, with shareholder primacy, and Bob McNamara, the inventor of scientific top-down management. So we need to change. And so the book articulates these principles. I think, though, today most people agree that this is the right direction. I think when I talk to leaders at all levels, there's a general conviction. We also know it is hard. So the reason why I wanted to write this book is as a guide for leaders who are keen to abandon the old ways and eager to lead from a place of purpose and humanity, and who are travelers on this journey and need help. And it's not that I have all of the answers, but this is something I've been, on this journey for the last 30 years. I was talking about, the purpose of a corporation is not to make money. It's an imperative. It's an outcome. I was talking about this in the 90s. And I think the beauty of this delightfully surprising turnaround and resurgence of Best Buy is that it gives credibility. And so the book is a guide, very practical with, full of stories and examples and practical advice on how to move in that direction. And as fellow, for my fellow travelers on that journey, there's questions at the end of each chapter that can be very helpful. So that was the mission of the book. And my mission, now that I've passed the baton at Best Buy, is to add my voice and my energy to this necessary refoundation and help others on that journey. So that's why I'm coaching and mentoring a bunch of CEOs and senior executives. That's why I'm joined the faculty at Harvard Business School to help train the next generation of leaders. I think this, to your point, Michael, this is now, right? And this is...
We don't have as much time as everyone thinks, by the way, to make this change, right?
We have a few ticking time bombs, and we better pay attention to them. And so but I'm optimistic when I see the next generation of leaders. People want to do the right thing, and I'm happy to add my contribution to this urgent refoundation.
One quick question, then I want to pass it back to Steve. When did you have, your whole first part of your book is really about, the meaning of work, and you've got this great quote by Khalil Gibran, work is love made visible. What was your epiphany, though? Because as you started at the beginning of the podcast, you said, I was a hard-charging McKinsey operations, by the numbers. Like, when did you have this epiphany that you're encouraging us to have today? What was it that when you looked at, was it the transition to Best Buy? You said, listen, I've got to do something different, or did it start before that?
It's been a long journey over the last 30 years. So in fact, in the book, I talk about that, but I'll highlight a few milestones. One was about 20 years ago. I'd been quite successful, arguably, and I'd been a partner at McKinsey & Company. I was on the executive team of a large multinational media and entertainment company, Vivendi Universal. And so in many ways, I'd been at the top of my first mountain, to quote David Brooks's book, The Second Mountain. And but I felt emptiness. There was nothing there. It was not fulfilling. And so that led me to introspection, which is something I highly recommend to everybody, right? Being clear about who do we want to be? What's the purpose of our life? As a leader, how do we want to be remembered? Write down your retirement speech is a good exercise, or even better, your eulogy. I did the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, at that time to really revisit my life and try to discern my calling. So that was a milestone, an important milestone. Another one was in 2009. I started to work with a coach. Before that, if somebody had asked me, or told me, Jack or Mary is working with a coach, I would say, what's wrong with them, right? Are they in trouble? They're going to be fired. It ends up, I realized that exactly 100% of the top 100 tennis players in the world have a coach, including Roger and Rafa. All of the NFL teams have a coach. And so there was this guy, Marshall Goldsmith, is a great friend and was my coach for many years, is the inventor of helping successful leaders get better and the inventor of feed forward. It's not about feedback. What I did, yesterday, I cannot change it, but how can I decide what I want to work on getting better? And how can I ask people around me to help me? So to make it very concrete, 3 months after I joined Best Buy, I told my team, look, this turnaround is going to be hard, right? Let's agree. And the reason why I know this is everybody thinks we're going to die. So that's how you know, right?
Right.
And so
the smart money's against us in this one.
That's right. So that means that all of us are going to need to be the best leader we can be. And that starts with me. So I have a coach, Marshall. He's going to come in. He's going to ask you for feedback. And then I'm going to tell you what I do with it. So Marshall collected all of this, the good and the other. And he actually told me, Hubert, you don't need to do anything about it, right? It's your decision. And say, okay, I get that. Let me decide that I want to get better on these three things, number one, number two, number three. And then I went back to my team, and believe me, that's painful. Now, I've gotten better at this, but initially when you do this, it's really hard. Thank you for all of the feedback. Based on what you've told me, Marshall, I've decided to work on these three things, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to follow up with each one of you to ask you for advice on how I can get better. And then I'm going to follow up in 3 or 4 months from now to see how I'm doing. And one of the things I've worked on, in the years I've worked with Marshall, is how to move away from being a leader who is trying to be the smartest person in the room, who's adding too much value. Marshall has written this great book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Highly recommend it. He lists the 20 quirks of successful people. I had 13 of the 20 quirks. and the key thing I learned...
Now I'm afraid to read it.
No, here you go. My name is Hubert. I need help. The key thing I learned with Marshall and during my years at Best Buy is that indeed my role as a leader is not to be the superhero who knows everything, who is there to save the day, who is driven by power, fame, glory, or money. But my role as a leader is to create an environment in which others can be successful. It's to pick, maybe the most important decision I make is, who should I put in position of power? What kind of leaders, right, do we want? And so being clear about, our expectations of leader. And again, I think today, the world needs leaders who are purposeful. They're clear about their purpose, what drives them. They're curious about what drives people around them, and they're able to connect what drives these individuals with the purpose of the company. There's, of course, I share a number of stories about this, and then who are there to create an environment where others can be successful and blossom, and who are vulnerable. My most frequently used phrase now is, my name is Hubert, I need help, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a major shift.
Well, that's one of the things I really love. One thing I meant to say earlier is that, and we talked about this off mic, this is not a retail book. I mean, I think it's certainly valuable to people in retail because I'm sure lots of people will connect to the Best Buy story in particular, but it's a leadership book. To me, and I'm using this term loosely, it's a very spiritual sort of book. So I just love how you inject so many different perspectives. But just quickly on this issue of vulnerability, one of the things that I've observed in my own career, just touch on it really in the book, is this idea of, it's somewhat humility. It's somewhat of realizing we're probably wrong. It's asking for help, not trying to be just this all powerful person. Can you just talk a little bit about how you realize that kind of the power of vulnerability for you Brene Brown fans out there? Just curious how you got to that and what advice you would give to people to kind of let their guard down and let people see them.
This is such an important transformation, right? And it's hard, right? Because so many of us, self-included, were trained to want to be perfectionists. And for many years, I confused perfection and performance. And if I'm expecting perfection of myself, I'm not going to like myself because guess what? I'm not perfect. And I'm not going to like people around me, right? Because they're human beings, so they're not perfect. Now, if I can, relax a little bit and start to appreciate, yes, I'm not perfect. It's okay, and that I can learn to love, all of the quirks and vulnerabilities. Then that's how you build genuine human connections. Cami Scarlett, our wonderful head of HR at Best Buy, one day at the company, she shared with everyone that for years she had struggled with depression following the deaths of her two parents. Do you know many senior executives at Fortune 100 companies or at any company for that matter, who are okay to share with everybody that they're struggling? Mm-hmm. That's not how we've been trained. This created, though, a flow of emails to her from people who said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and then I've struggled with it, and that's what led us to a lot more emphasis on our mental health program, help with anxiety. 20% of any human population suffers from mental health issues. During COVID, let's assume it's 80%. And the secret to the resurgence of Best Buy, it's this humanity of the organization. I'll illustrate that with a story because I think it's how you learn, right? And it's not a made up story; it's a true story. One day, there is remember first that back in 2012, our quality of service at Best Buy, you guys probably experimented it, right, or experienced it. Was not good. But fast forward to 2018 or 2019, there's a young woman who comes to one of our stores with a young boy, 3 or 4 year old. For holiday, the child had gotten a dinosaur toy. Unfortunately, the dinosaur is very sick. The head has been dismantled from the body, so really sick. Now, they go to the store. At most stores, you would have been sent to the toy aisle, and with some luck, there's still a dinosaur that you can buy. But the boy, that's not what he wanted. He wanted a cure for the dinosaur. And so there's 2 Best Buy associates, 2 blue shirts, who see what's going on and take the dinosaur, the sick dinosaur, go behind a counter and start performing a surgical procedure on the sick dinosaur. And like in Good Doctor on Amazon, they walk the boys through the steps. And of course, at the last minute, they substitute a new dinosaur, but give the child a cured dinosaur. So you can imagine the extraordinary joy and happiness of the child and his mother. Now, do you think that there was a standard operating procedure at Best Buy on how to deal with sick dinosaurs? Or maybe a memo from me, the very smart, CEO on, what you do if that happened? Of course not.
Right.
But, what happened is that these 2 associates found it in their hearts to create this happiness. And they also felt, right, that they had the freedom to do this. And so, my view of leadership, it's about creating an environment where you can unleash human magic. That's human magic when you see it, right? And at the same time, our comps were going through the roof. And so, what I want to share is, all of the ingredients. What does it take to create this environment where instead of being focused on numbers and, you didn't hit the numbers or you hit the number, no, you create an environment where people can be beautiful human beings, the best version, the biggest, the most beautiful version of themselves, and do great things to each other, to customers, to the community in which they operate, all of the stakeholders with a focus on the noble purpose of the company. And with that, resulting in extraordinary economic performance as well as an outcome.
I mean, what you're describing is a false narrative between either or, performance and magic, because it's a false narrative that you have to make a choice. It's a wonderful way to wrap our time with you today. You've been very generous. Thanks so much for your time. The book is The Heart of Business, available at all places where you love to buy books. It's a fantastic read. I've had the privilege of having it a little bit early to read through it. So I've got the jump on everyone, but I'd encourage it. Steve, last words to you.
Well, first of all, thanks for joining us. I really just love, and I think it's one of the things I've been working on. I'm a little bit more of a glasses half empty sort of guy. And so I just love not only the very pragmatic advice in the book, but just this sort of joyful, uplifting, positive message that not only comes through in speaking with you, but certainly comes out in the book. So thanks so much. And yeah, everybody check it out.
If you like what you heard, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform, so you can catch up with all our great interviews, including Hal Lawton talking about Tractor Supply's remarkable Life Out Here growth story. New episodes of Season 5, presented by Market Dial, will show up each and every Tuesday. And be sure to tell your friends and colleagues in the retail industry all about us.
And I'm Steve Dennis, author of the best-selling book, Remarkable Retail, How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at StephenPDennis.com.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant, keynote speaker, and producer and host of a series of retail trade podcasts, including this one. You can learn even more about me on LinkedIn, and you can catch up with Steve and I in person at the NRF Big Show in New York, January 16th on the stage, talking about what it takes to be remarkable with Container Store SVP Gretchen Gans. See you in New York, everyone.